What does it have to do with Thanksgiving?
And why do we have to smack it with a hammer?
It's called the peppermint pig. It's a Victorian-era tradition.
Someone's been watching too much PBS.
I like the tradition of pie.
This feels lame.
Sorry, sis. Now that I'm on the carnivore diet, I cannot eat a pig made of candy.
Oh, so you'd rather have a real one?
Oh, I'd rather eat a real one right now.
Guys, stop. Your mom's getting that look in her eyes.
Huh?
Yeah, come on, guys. Let her have her perfect Pinterest moment.
Is it so bad that I want Thanksgiving to actually mean something this year?
Yes. No.
So again, how it works is everyone goes around and takes a turn hitting, tapping, pig with the hammer. And everyone says something they're thankful for. And when we're all done, we dump it out and eat the candy. Okay?
Candy? Looks more like a bar of soap.
Like you know what soap looks like.
I saw him wash his hands last week.
Just let the figure say something.
Okay. I am thankful that Jerry finally dressed appropriately for a family get-together.
I did go through a tank top era,
Yeah, no one wants to see your shoulder hair, Uncle Jer.
but welcome to my Crocs era.
Feet off the table.
You don't have eras, you're not Taylor.
So cool.
I am thankful for Crocs.
Okay. I'm thankful Mom didn't burn the rolls this year.
And I would love to eat all of those rolls, but again, carnivore diet.
I'm thankful because after this pig thing is over, I can go beast mode on this pie.
Pass.
Wait, we can pass? That's a rule?
Wait, am I losing? What?
Okay, see, this is why I do not come to your family game nights.
Okay, well, I'm thankful for a family who's willing to do this all over again.
Oh.
And really consider their blessings. All the blessings our great God has given us.
Guys, I'm thankful that God blessed me with a wife who makes family moments special.
I'm grateful God gave me some good friends on my basketball team.
I'm thankful for vegan butter and the mashed potatoes this year because, guys, this is not a phase.
Wait. Seriously, that was vegan butter?
Oops.
Okay, now the reason I'm thankful for pie is because it reminds me of Grandma. I really miss her, but I'm thankful she was my grandma.
Well, with that being said, it's been quite a year. You all know about my health, my job, well, you all know. Thank you for your prayers. I'm grateful for my family. Very grateful to God.
Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good.
His love endures forever. Okay, who's ready to eat?
Let's talk about the vegan butter. The vegan butter. That's going to go right through me. It's going to go right through me.
All of it.
All these cholesterol for our fries.
I think we should just run this on the way.
When it comes to courage, we tend to think about the kind of valor that is demanded in military battle. Or we think about what it means to stand up to a corporation that is punishing, if you will, or powers beyond us that seem insurmountable. When we think of courage, maybe we think about facing some dread disease. But what does courage look like for the mom or for the dad who's wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt? What does courage look like in the day-to-day, the everyday? I mean, do we get the notion that courage is beyond that which a child can experience? It just takes too much accumulated experience in life and the savvy that comes with it. What do we think about courage? You know, every day or week, let's just say, we live the reality of that family around that table. There are moments where we succumb to the natural tendency to give critical dismissiveness to somebody, or petulant rivalry, or jaded sarcasm, or just to be condescending. But somebody makes the courageous decision to turn the tide, to stop it. And in that video, it was first the dad who realized that this whole thing was going amok. And he made a statement that kind of stopped that in the moment turned the tide. And then the son said something of gratitude. And then it was really the daughter who said something of a great and deep gratitude that became the spark to a miracle around that island. Deep personal sharing and gratitude to God for what God had done. Friends, gratitude is a powerful force. It's a powerful force, and it's a choice. It's a choice that leads to other choices, other emotions, and other actions, from respect and faith and forgiveness and kindness, attitude adjustments, appreciation. But it's a choice that turns the tide. Now, this is a picture that has to do with the meeting of oceans. It has to do with the Atlantic and the Pacific. And there are other photographs, probably, one would have to believe, south of Chile at Cape Horn. But there are other pictures out on the internet that over-aggrandize this, and it looks like muddy waters and clean waters, and that's really a fresh water flowing into the ocean. But the real meeting of the Atlantic and the Pacific, and there are inaccuracies into those other posts, they say that the Atlantic and Pacific never mix. They really do mix. But it's also true that they have different oceanic properties. They have different density. They have different currents. They have different saltiness. The Atlantic salt is different than the Pacific salt in terms of the content of it. And so when these oceans meet and they collide, there's going to be a turning of the tide. There's a bit of a battle, even in the seas, of which will win out. Who will turn the tide? Courageous gratitude turns the tide. Now, this is from the dictionary, or about phrases. When you turn the tide, you are changing things, usually dramatically and usually for the better. When you are an agent of turning the tide, you oftentimes are changing the dynamics that are at play. You are reorienting the attitudes that people have, redirecting them, you might say. You're oftentimes diffusing emotional bombs that are about to go off. And oftentimes you are causing the rising ocean of emotions or anxieties or animosities to begin to recede. Friends, Thanksgiving is a great time to exercise the muscle of gratitude. And it's too bad that gratitude gets relegated to but one day. It isn't a courageous choice that we cultivate daily in our lives. But it is nonetheless a great day for us to exercise that muscle of heart and head and actions. And here's the odd irony this year. Given the recent political outcomes, wherever you may be in that, there are actually people who are advocating boycotting Thanksgiving this year. Or they are saying this is a great time to dish out a heaping helping of consternation or animosity if you sense somebody is in the opposite place that you might have been around the election. It's a time for vitriol. It's a time to serve that kind of helping of things. Someone needs to stop that, to turn the tide, and they do that through courageous gratitude. And we need courageous gratitude in our time because it's what busts the negativity bias. Now, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but social scientists tell us that in human nature there is a negativity bias. Maybe it comes with sin and the fall of man, humankind, and maybe it's just something that's learned, but it's documented that there is a negativity bias that we carry, and it has to be worked against. The tide has to be turned. So what they tell us is the negativity bias is our tendency not only to register negative stimuli more readily, but to dwell on those events, which is to say you kind of park your emotional car at that point. You camp out in negativity. You live through the mindset and experience of negativity. It's our default mechanism. It's a part of the human condition. Also known as a positive-negative asymmetry, this negativity bias means that we feel the sting of rebuke or more powerfully than we feel the joy of praise. And that's what explains, really, these dynamics that we're constantly battling in our lives. Bad first impressions are difficult to overcome. And that's because of this negativity bias. Or past traumas have some lingering effects. In other words, you're paying with today's currency, debts from old. They have a weight, these traumas of carrying over and being relived in our lives. It's why amid many praises that you might receive, you hold on to, you remember the thing that stays in your mind that stings so much are the criticisms. This negativity bias is why a negative experience tends to sour a good day. An otherwise good day, but there's a negative experience. Now it's been all messed up in your mind. The bad news, or why bad news is more memorable than positive. And that's why even in political campaigns or anything, they go negative, because it tends to attach, it tends to be remembered longer than anything else. So tomorrow is a day for courageous gratitude. Just look at that face. It's a day for us to practice gratitude. Gratitude has an object, and it's to God, as well as expressing it to others. But a face like that is infectious. There's just a wonderful thing that gratitude does, and one of the things that gratitude has a way of doing in the social setting is turning the tide. And I believe that the Bible talks about this in numerous places, but one of the stories that I love the most is the story of the 10 lepers. This is in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. So what I want to do tonight is I just want to read that through so that it can kind of marinate your soul, and then I want to dissect it a little bit and just chronicle what are some of the obvious things that we see about that. So here it is. On the way to Jerusalem, he, Jesus, was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy upon us." And when he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, "Were not" what? 10 cleansed. And where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? And he said to him, "Rise, go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Now, this is the average American aisle in a grocery store, right? And it's predicated on choice. Americans love a plethora. They love many, many choices. They like to feel like they're in control, and they're choosing from different things. They want to be the masters of choice. And if you didn't know this, the things that are at eye level are oftentimes there because the suppliers either that produce that pay for that middle section because it's the most visible, or there are various kinds of kickbacks, if you will, and so forth. But if you get the top shelf, it's hard to get at, or the lower parts, those are less desirable for product placement. And I want you to realize that when you make the decision for gratitude, It's very seldom at the eye level. The decisions that we make, the choice that we make to be grateful to God and to express that to people is almost always on the top shelf, or one that you have to bend down for to get on the lower level. It's not one that comes easy, but it's a decision, it's a choice that turns the tide, and it's one that's courageous. So let me read that text to you one more time, and this time the underlining I'm going to use for emphasis, but I want you to notice what I'm reading, okay? So this time it's just for emphasis. On the way to Jerusalem, as he was passing between Samaria and Galilee, and as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers, who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy upon us. And when he saw them, he said to them, Go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. And then Jesus answered, Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? And he said to him, Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Now I want to hold there for just a minute. I do believe that there are decisions of courageous gratitude that happen every day for us. They're not the watershed moments, they're daily occurrences. Opportunities to do good, opportunities to be a part of God's work, but also an opportunity to have courageous gratitude in a way that turns the tide. So what I want to do is I want to take that text apart and just name them for you aloud so that you can ponder them this Thanksgiving. The first one is this. It happens, the choice happens amid everything else. On the way to Jerusalem. That's when it happened. On the way to something else. And that's the way it oftentimes happens for all of us. And we get so hurried, we get so harried, we get so frenzied that we don't see people who are in need, or we don't want to see people in need. And yet that's where that moment of action to be used by God or to give courageous gratitude is so needed. This is a guy named Mike Smith in Cedarburg. Do any of you know about him? So Mike was somebody that I knew very well when I pastored there for 15 years. He's an awesome singer. He sang in my church numerous times, has a gorgeous voice. I believe he sang at the Bucks game this past Saturday and sang the national anthem. But here's the deal. He's a garbage man and in town, and he goes by, they just call him G-Man. And for a town of about 12,000, he's the person who personally picks up the trash for almost a third, almost 4,000 people. And he does that in a week, okay? And only part of the week. So, but he's a person who's a deeply devout follower of Jesus. And Mike and I have spent numerous times together, and he sees his job as a ministry. And he's known for the handshake that he gives and the wave that he gives to people and this infectious smile that he has. But he's not one who's so doing his thing that he doesn't notice folks. So he has made a difference in people's lives, not just by his demeanor, but by actually saving a life. There was a woman, and she was an elderly woman, and she was on the porch, and he waved as he always did, and she waved. And at that moment, she seemed to be fine. But he said he felt in his spirit that when she waved at him, it was not a wave of hello, it was a wave of come here, I need you. So he went up to her, and he no sooner got in front of her that she collapsed in his arms from a heart attack. And he quickly knew where the husband was. She was there for her grandchildren that particular day, just a couple houses away, and they got the rescue, and she lived. But that's always the way Mike approaches every day. He looks for, amid everything else, the chance to be a conduit of God's grace and to give courageous gratitude to God, which he lives and breathes every day. So the lepers came to Jesus on his way to Jerusalem, and as he was going between Samaria and Galilee. In other words, there are places that are unexpected where God shows up, where courageous gratitude is needed. Places that are unexpected or places that are uncomfortable for us. And that's certainly what it would have been when it was like going by Samaria. It's like the red light district. It was not where a good Jewish boy needs to be. But that's where God showed up that day for him to make a difference and for him to be an agent of courageous gratitude. And so it was at that point that 10 lepers came up to Jesus, and in other words, he was interrupted. Interruptions are the place where oftentimes we're called upon to be agents of God's grace, to be conduits of God's grace, and to express that tide-turning, courageous gratitude. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at interruptions until I'm not good at interruptions, which is often. You know, you just get the mindset that I've got this thing and I don't want to be interrupted from that, but oftentimes the interruptions are a divine appointment from God. And so we see that in the story in terms of how courageous gratitude is expressed. And those lepers stood off at a distance. Now that's by social custom. It's also by health protocol back in the day with this skin disease and disorder. And they were required to stand off to the side of the road if there was a gutter in the gutter. And they oftentimes had a bell and they had to ring it and say, unclean, unclean. And we know that the one that came to Jesus afterwards was a Samaritan to boot. So outcasts in many ways. Who are the outcasts in our daily life that we need to notice? The people who are left out, the people who are ostracized, the people who need the touch of God, and for us to be people who turn the tide. And then Jesus healed them. We're told that he told them to go and show yourselves to the priests, which means he'd made a decision about healing them, because the only reason that they would go to the priests is so that they could be verified that they were healed and the skin disorder was no longer at play. And so it's really what happens for us, the choice, that when we begin with sympathy, we have compassion, which now begins to stir action that goes with it. And we have empathy, and we've made this distinction in church before. The difference between sympathy and empathy is empathy can't help but make a difference. Empathy has to act. And so Jesus heals them and sends them on their way to see the priests so that he can verify that they've been cleansed. And when they're on their way, one of them notices, they all notice, that they've been healed, and one of them turns back. This, my friends, is the key to courageous gratitude. Because only, and I think that the statistic in the biblical story is correct, only about 10 people will make that decision to turn around, to go back, and to express overtly their gratitude. Most of us just hold our gratitude as a sweet little feeling in our hearts. But courageous gratitude turns around, goes back, and expresses it. And that's exactly what we see in the story. And then he comes to Jesus, and he falls down in humility at his feet. Humility is when we realize that I don't deserve this, that I may have wanted it, but I don't deserve it. This is a gift that comes from God above. So I need to show my incredible gratitude, my humility, how thankful I am for this wonderful healing that took place. And then it says that Jesus said to him, go, your faith has made you well. And the interesting thing is the verb here in Greek is a derivation, a sort of a change on a word that is used for physical healing, but it also suggests the idea of salvation. In other words, that not only was this leper who was healed physically, but he also had an experience of saving wholeness that came by the touch of Jesus because he responded in a way of courageous gratitude. My friends, our world is a blurry place, and it is a place of a negativity bias. And that negativity bias demands that there be, or craves that there be, people of courageous gratitude who simply by living courageous gratitude have a way of turning the tide in other people's lives. And that choice of courageous gratitude is one that leads to all kinds of emotions, all kinds of other choices, and leads to all kinds of other actions. So here we are the night before Thanksgiving. Tomorrow, my family will all be gathered in Eau Claire, where my wife's mother is living. My son and daughter-in-law from St. Louis, my daughter and her family from Minnesota will be gathering there, and they will have an actual peppermint pig. And they will whack that thing, and I'm sure my little granddaughter Annika will whack it more than once. And they will express their courageous gratitude. Gratitude that turns the tide on all the other stuff, this negativity bias that we live in this world. Now, I'd like to pass out a peppermint pig to all of you. But I don't have a peppermint pig for all of you. But I do have this little pig, and I have plenty of them for each and every one of you. So as you're leaving today, I encourage you to take one of these as a reminder tomorrow to cultivate the choice of courageous gratitude so that God can turn the tide through you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are like the lepers. We know that something's not right. We cry out to you, Lord, have mercy. We're stuck. We can't get through on our own. Our bodies, our souls, our minds, we're just hurting from the leprosy that we suffer from. And we yell out to you, and you heal us. But God, help us to make that key decision to turn back to whoever in our lives needs to hear from us, thank you, but most of all to you. Because what we're saying is, I don't deserve this, but you are a good, good God. And I am so incredibly grateful. Thanksgiving is my heart's disposition. May we all experience this tomorrow, tonight, and indeed every day. For we ask it in Jesus' name.